predictive algorithmic auditing and ethical compliance. My father, Gunnar, had a way of saying it like he was handling something foul. Honestly, Tiffany, couldn't you have picked something a little less theoretical and a lot more useful for a young woman? My name is Tiffany, by the way. And that pronouncement, or variations of it, became the soundtrack to my early 20s, especially around the polished mahogany of our family dining table, where McCormick & Son Industries, or MSI, as it was proudly branded, was the only topic of conversation that truly mattered. I remember one Sunday dinner particularly vividly. I'd just finished my second year. "Still plugging away at that digital witchcraft, are you?" Logan, my older brother and heir, apparent to the MSI throne, smirked from across the table, spearing a piece of roast beef. He was all slicked back hair and smug confidence. "It's about identifying systemic risks, Logan," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "Things like outdated data security, non-compliance with evolving regulations, the kind of stuff that can bring a company down if it's not managed." Gunnar let out a short barking laugh. "Brought down? MSI? Girl, we built this company on grit and handshakes, not algorithms. Your grandfather would be spinning in his grave if he heard you talking about ethical compliance as the cornerstone of business." "But Dad, things are changing," I pressed, a familiar knot tightening in my stomach. "The way companies handle data, for instance. There are new privacy laws coming in, and if MSI isn't prepared—" "Prepared?" Logan interrupted, wiping his mouth with a linen napkin. "We have Otto, good old Otto in finance. He handles all the paperwork. Don't you worry your pretty little head about it, Tiff. Focus on finding a nice young man. That's a better investment for your time." "This degree," Gunnar declared, thumping the table lightly with his fist, making the silverware jump, "is a waste of good tuition money for a girl. You should have studied marketing or HR, something softer." My mother, Vivienne, just offered a tight, sympathetic smile from her end of the table, a silent plea for me to drop it. Appeasement was her specialty. They didn't get it. They never would. What they called digital witchcraft I saw as a lens, and looking at MSI through that lens was terrifying. During a brief mandatory summer internship there, a period I mostly spent fetching coffee and being condescended to, I'd seen enough. Their Shepherd client management system was practically a museum exhibit, creaking under the weight of data it was never designed to hold securely. They were exploiting data collection loopholes that were clearly on the legislative chopping block, treating them like permanent fixtures. Their cybersecurity for sensitive client information? I'd seen more robust protection on a free email account. It was a house of cards built on arrogance and willful ignorance. So I channeled that dinner table dismissal, every scoff from Logan, every patronizing pat on the head from Gunnar, into my studies. I graduated top of my class. And while they were busy patting themselves on the back for another quarter of solid traditional business, I started my own small consultancy firm. Tiny, yes, but built on the very principles they mocked. I was helping businesses not become MSI. The irony wasn't lost on me. Last Tuesday, I was in my small office, finalising a proposal for a new client, when I heard voices from the kitchen. I live in a small apartment above a detached garage on my parents' property, a living situation born more out of financial necessity post-graduation than any familial desire for closeness, at least on my part. The kitchen window was open. It was Gunnar. His voice, usually so booming and confident, was low, tight. "Don't understand. It's just a minor regulatory tweak, Otto. How can it be causing this much inconvenience?" A pause. No, don't be dramatic. It's not a significant operational impact. It's a blip. We'll absorb it. We always do. Another pause, longer this time. Just handle it. and keep it quiet. The line clicked off. I stopped typing. A minor regulatory tweak. I knew exactly which one he was talking about. It had been flagged in industry journals for months, the one targeting precisely the kind of data loopholes MSI had been feasting on. They had no idea. This wasn't a blip. This was the first violin tuning up, the soft, almost imperceptible scrape of the bow across the strings. This was just the overture to their opera of disaster. And I, with my pointless degree, was probably the only one in the family who could read the whole damn score. A small, cold smile touched my lips. Let the music begin. The minor regulatory tweak hit the local business news a week later, not as a headline, but as a concerned murmur in a financial column. MSI scrambles after new data compliance rules bite, the subheader read. Apparently, their main client onboarding process, heavily reliant on the now-closed loophole, had ground to a halt. Contracts were delayed, new clients were getting antsy. Logan, ever the PR maestro in his own mind, decided to address it head-on. He agreed to a live interview on a local business news channel. I watched it online, a cup of rapidly cooling tea in my hand. So Mr. McCormick, the interviewer, a sharp woman named Brenda Carlisle, began, "There are reports of significant disruptions at MSI due to the new GDR P7 regulations. Can you clarify the situation?" Logan puffed out his chest. "Brenda, significant disruptions is a strong term, a gross exaggeration, frankly. We're experiencing minor procedural recalibrations. Our robust infrastructure is more than capable of adapting. We're talking about optimizing our synergistic data flow to enhance client privacy protocols, leveraging legacy systems while integrating cutting-edge compliance frameworks." He beamed, clearly pleased with his word salad. Brenda blinked. "So, you're saying there are delays, but you're fixing them?" "We are proactively future-proofing," Logan declared, louder this time. "MSI has always been at the forefront of secure business practices." I snorted, nearly choking on my tea. He sounded like a malfunctioning corporate buzzword generator. The comment section below the livestream was brutal. "Does this guy even know what he's talking about?" one read. Another, "Synergistic data flow. My intern sounds more coherent." The next day, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Tiffany, this is Alistair Finch from Innovate Solutions. Your Professor Shiloh gave me your contact." My heart did a little leap. Innovate Solutions was a fast-growing, progressive tech firm, the kind of company MSI executives probably sneered at for being too new age. "Mr. Finch, yes, hello. Shiloh speaks very highly of your work in predictive auditing. We've been looking for someone to help us stress test our new ethical AI framework, specifically from a compliance and unforeseen consequence angle. Your dissertation on algorithmic bias was compelling." We talked for nearly an hour. By the end of it, I had landed my first major client, a real one that valued my digital witchcraft and was willing to pay for it. I hung up, a grin stretching across my face. Vindication tasted sweet, like the expensive chocolate I was definitely going to buy myself. That evening, as I was sketching out the initial audit parameters for Innovate, my mother called. "Tiffany, darling." Vivian's voice was honey smooth, but with an undercurrent of carefully curated anxiety. "How are you?" "I'm good, Mom. Actually, I just landed a big project with Innovate Solutions." "Oh, that's nice, dear." A beat of silence. The nice was as enthusiastic as if I'd told her I'd found a particularly interesting pebble. "Listen, darling, about your father and Logan, this little business hiccup, it's putting them under such strain. The minor procedural recalibrations." I couldn't resist. "Well, whatever it is," she said, a hint of impatience creeping in. "Your father is very stressed. Logan is trying his best, but he's sensitive, you know." "Sensitive? Logan? The brother who once told me my brain was too full of useless numbers to attract a husband." "I just think," Vivian continued, her voice softening into its familiar manipulative caress, "it would mean so much to them if you were supportive. Maybe pop over for dinner. Show a little solidarity. Family is so important in times like these." "Supportive how, Mom?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "Offer to help them optimize their synergistic data flow." "Tiffany, please don't be difficult. Just be there for them. Your father isn't as young as he used to be." "I have a lot of work with my new client, Mom," I said, "but I'll keep them in my thoughts." She sighed, a gust of maternal disappointment. "Well, all right, dear, but do think about it." We hung up. My good mood had deflated slightly, not because I felt guilty, but because of the sheer predictability of it all. They wanted my support, my silent nodding presence, but not my expertise. Never that. I turned back to my laptop, determined to focus on Innovate. As my email client refreshed, a new message popped into my inbox. The sender was anonymous, a string of random characters. The subject line simply read, "A warning." My cursor hovered over it. Curiosity won. The email was short, just one sentence. "The regulatory change is a scratch. The real rot is deeper. Ask them about the Shepherd system's old bones. They're brittle." Shepherd. My blood ran a little cold. The ancient, patched-together core of MSI's operations. The system I knew, even from my limited intern days, was a disaster waiting to happen. Brittle bones indeed. Someone inside MSI was scared, and they thought I could do something about it. Or maybe they just wanted to watch it all burn down with me. The anonymous email about the Shepherd system gnawed at me. Brittle bones. It was too specific, too knowing to be a random crank. My pointless degree had taught me a lot about digital forensics, about how even supposedly secure systems leave traces, echoes in the vast expanse of publicly accessible data. Old press releases, archived website snapshots, forgotten forum posts by ex-employees. You'd be surprised what you can piece together. So I started digging. Not by hacking, nothing illegal. Just by applying the analytical skills my family so readily dismissed. I cross-referenced MSI's known software architecture, gleaned from my internship and industry scuttlebutt, with known vulnerabilities in outdated server platforms. I looked for patterns in their sparse technical job postings over the years, noting the skills they weren't hiring for, like modern cybersecurity experts. It was like assembling a prehistoric skeleton, a missing femur here, a cracked rib there. But the picture emerging was grim. The Shepherd system, as far as I could tell, hadn't had a significant core update in nearly a decade. It was likely running on unsupported operating systems riddled with unpatched security holes that any moderately skilled hacker could waltz through. A catastrophic data breach wasn't a matter of if, but when. And judging by the anonymous emailer's urgency, when was rapidly approaching. Meanwhile, MSI stumbled into another pothole. A journalist named Caroline, who specialized in corporate accountability, published a piece in a respected online financial journal. It wasn't about data this time, but about MSI's laughably outdated environmental practices, specifically how their main manufacturing plant was still using an archaic waste disposal method that was technically legal by a hair's breadth, but environmentally atrocious. MSI, profiting from pollution, legally, for now, the headline blared. It wasn't a bombshell, but it caused ripples. A few smaller ethical investment funds publicly announced they were divesting their MSI shares. Minor investor jitters, as the article put it. I saw Gunnar on the local news again, looking flustered outside a Chamber of Commerce luncheon. "This is a baseless smear campaign by agenda-driven muckrakers," he blustered into a reporter's microphone. "MSI is a pillar of this community, a responsible corporate citizen." He looked less like a pillar and more like a man trying to plug a dike with his finger. My own consultancy, by contrast, was humming. Innovate Solutions loved my initial audit findings. They were proactive, engaged, and genuinely wanted to build better, safer systems. It was refreshing. I even got a referral from them to another company, a mid-sized logistics firm looking to overhaul their data security. My digital witchcraft was suddenly in demand. I was still technically part of the McCormick family group chat, a digital space I mostly muted, but occasionally skimmed for signs of impending doom or amusement. One evening, a new message from Logan popped up, accompanied by a picture of him shaking hands with a portly, beaming man. "Boom! Just landed the Henderson account. Biggest deal of the year for MSI. Take that, naysayers. We're stronger than ever. Tra MSI unstoppable. Threads legacy." My stomach clenched. The Henderson account. I knew of them. They were huge, a massive new influx of client data, transactions and operational demands, all to be processed through Shepherd, the ancient brittle-boned Shepherd system. Logan had just gleefully announced he was going to run a marathon on a sprained ankle. No, worse. He was going to run a marathon on a leg that was already showing signs of gangrene. He hadn't just loaded the gun and pointed it at his own head. He'd pulled the trigger and was now bragging about the satisfying click, oblivious to the fact the bullet was already halfway to his brain. I leaned back in my chair, a cold, clear certainty settling over me. The overture was over. The first act was about to begin, and it was going to be a tragedy of their own making. All I had to do was wait for the curtain to rise. The Henderson account went live on a Monday. By Wednesday, the Shepherd system wasn't just creaking, it was screaming. The first sign was an email from a contact at a small supplier to MSI, a company I'd done a tiny bit of freelance work for a year ago. "Hey, Tiffany," it read. "Weird question. Are you hearing anything about MSI's payment system? Our invoices are bouncing and their accounts payable department is unreachable. Says their system is experiencing technical difficulties." Technical difficulties was an understatement. By Thursday, MSI's client portal was down. Their internal communications were crippled. The sheer volume of data and transactions from the Henderson account, piled onto an already overloaded and fragile infrastructure, had caused a catastrophic system malfunction. Not a full data breach, not yet, but a complete operational seizure. Logan's biggest deal of the year was dead on arrival, and it was taking the rest of MSI with it. The following Sunday, I got the inevitable summons for family lunch. The mood in the dining room was arctic. Gunnar looked grey, his usual bluster replaced by a haunted, restless energy. Logan picked at his food, his jaw tight, dark circles under his eyes. Vivian fluttered around, offering more potatoes, more gravy, her voice unnaturally bright. "So, Tiffany," Gunnar said, his voice raspy, halfway through the strained meal. He cleared his throat. "This, computer stuff you do. Predictive, you said?" I nodded slowly, taking a sip of water. Predictive algorithmic auditing and ethical compliance, yes. Right. He waved a dismissive hand, though the gesture lacked its usual force. Could any of that knowledge offer any simple fixes for a temporary system outage? Just hypothetically, of course. Hypothetically, I said, meeting his gaze, my field is about predicting and preventing such outages by identifying foundational rot and systemic vulnerabilities before they cripple a company. It's not really about applying simple fixes after the fact, especially when the foundations themselves are rotten. Logan slammed his fork down. "Oh, here we go. Miss I told you so." "Logan, please," Vivian whispered, her eyes darting nervously between us. "No, it's fine, Mom," I said, my voice calm. "He's right. I did tell you. Repeatedly." Gunnar just stared at his plate. For the first time, I saw not arrogance, but a flicker of genuine fear in his eyes. The next morning, the real bombshell dropped. The Shepherd system malfunction hadn't just crippled operations, it had exposed something far uglier. In the chaos of the system failure, corrupted files had become accessible, files that should have remained buried. Files that showed a pattern of falsified compliance reports signed off by Otto, MSI's long-suffering CFO. Reports that Logan had apparently pressured him into signing, assuring him it was just temporary paperwork to keep the auditors happy until they could properly upgrade. Otto, seeing the writing on the wall and clearly terrified of becoming the sole scapegoat for years of cooked books, did what any cornered animal would do. He bit back. An email landed in Carolyn Brewer's inbox, the journalist who'd written about MSI's environmental issues. This one wasn't anonymous. It was from Otto, and it contained scanned copies of internal memos, doctored spreadsheets, and a very detailed account of how he'd been coerced into signing off on compliance documents he knew were false. Caroline, to her credit, moved fast. By afternoon, her new article was live. MSI systems collapse exposes potential data fraud, leaked documents allege years of falsified compliance. It was a meticulous, damning piece, quoting Otto extensively and showcasing the irrefutable evidence. The effect was immediate. MSI's stock, already wobbly, didn't just dip, it plummeted. Trading had to be halted twice. And then, the quote that sealed their immediate fate. Ulysses Wade, MSI's largest and most influential investor, a man known for his ruthless financial acumen and zero tolerance for incompetence, issued a public statement through his spokesperson. Mr. Wade is aware of the serious allegations and operational failures at McCormick & Son Industries. He is monitoring the situation at MSI very closely and will take all necessary actions to protect his investment. Monitoring closely was investor speak for sharpening the axe. The opera wasn't just in its first act anymore. The stage was on fire and the lead singers were choking on smoke. The fallout from Caroline's article was a Category 5 hurricane hitting MSI. Phones rang off the hook, furious clients demanding answers about their compromised data and stalled projects, vendors screaming about unpaid invoices, and the press hounding them for comments they weren't equipped to give. Ulysses Wade, true to his word, didn't just monitor, he pounced. An urgent meeting was demanded with Gunnar, not requested. The tone I heard through the grapevine, my old supplier contact was proving quite informative, was less, let's discuss, and more, explain yourself before I liquidate you. Logan, predictably, tried to throw Otto under the bus. He issued a statement claiming Otto was a disgruntled former employee. Otto had officially resigned the moment Caroline's article hit, smart man, who was acting out of malice, and that MSI was the victim of a malicious internal actor. It was so transparently desperate, it was almost funny. Otto, however, wasn't going down quietly. He'd lawyered up, and word was he was threatening to go on a media tour, detailing every single shady directive he'd ever received from Gunnar and Logan, unless he received a severance package so generous it would make a king blush. Checkmate, Otto. Gunnar and Logan were now in full panic mode, scrambling to find IT consultants who could perform miracles. But MSI's reputation was already toxic waste. Reputable firms wouldn't touch them or quoted them astronomical figures for even looking at the mess. The few desperate bottom-feeder consultants they did manage to engage just shook their heads and muttered about legacy systems and fundamental architectural failure before presenting equally terrifying bills for doing essentially nothing. My phone rang. It was Vivienne. This time the honeyed tones were gone, replaced by raw, unfiltered panic. "Tiffany! Oh, Tiffany, thank God you answered!" She was audibly crying. "It's a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. Your father, he's beside himself. And Logan, he's trying so hard, but everyone is attacking them." "Attacking them, Mum? Or holding them accountable for their actions?" I kept my voice cool, professional. "Don't be like that, Tiffany, not now," she sobbed. "This is your family, your poor father. He built this company from nothing. You can't just stand by and watch them fall apart. You have to help them. For my sake, Tiffany, please, for family." Ah, the family card, always played when all other cards have failed. "Mum," I said, my voice gentle but firm, "what exactly do you expect me to do? Wave a magic wand and make years of bad decisions disappear? You're so smart with all those computers," she pleaded. "Surely there's something, anything. Your father, he needs you." My computer stuff, as he calls it, is about preventing these kinds of meltdowns, not cleaning them up after the fact when the damage is already catastrophic, I replied. "I have my own business to run, Mom. Innovate Solutions just offered me a partnership, actually. They want to expand my ethical auditing division." There was a stunned silence on the other end, broken only by a sniffle. The news of my success, my thriving career built on the very foundation they'd mocked, clearly wasn't the comfort she was seeking. A partnership?" she stammered. "Oh, well, that's wonderful, dear, but your family—" "I'm sorry, Mum. I have a client meeting I need to prepare for." I wasn't entirely sorry. "I hope things work out." I ended the call, a strange calmness settling over me. The power dynamic had irrevocably shifted. They were drowning, and I was standing on the shore, holding not a life raft, but a very detailed report on why their ship was unseaworthy in the first place. Later that evening, my phone buzzed with a voicemail notification. It was a number I knew well, but a voice I barely recognized. Gunnar. "Tiffany?" His voice was strained, thin, devoid of its usual booming arrogance. All the air had gone out of him. It's your father. We need to talk about your, expertise. It seems we underestimated it. And you. Call me, please." I listened to the message twice. Underestimated it. Underestimated me. The understatement of the century. I let the voicemail sit there, unanswered. Let him squirm a little longer. He, who had never once called to ask about my studies, my career, my life, unless it was to criticize or dismiss. Now he was pleading. The overture was long past. The fat lady was warming up backstage, and she had my name on her song sheet. I let Gunnar's desperate voicemail marinate for a full 24 hours. Let him twist in the wind of his own making. Then, and only then, did I call him back. "Dad," I said, my voice coolly professional, as if he were a prospective client I was moderately interested in. "Tiffany, you called?" "Tiffany, yes, thank you for calling back." The relief in his voice was palpable, almost pathetic. Can you come to the office? Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. "The MSI office?" I asked, letting a beat of silence hang. I haven't set foot in there willingly in years. I know, he said quickly, but it's important, urgent, please." "All right," I conceded. 10 o'clock. The next morning, walking into the MSI headquarters felt like stepping into a mausoleum. The usual bustling energy was gone, replaced by a hushed, anxious gloom. The receptionist, a woman who used to give me pitying looks when I was an intern, now stared at me with wide, almost fearful eyes. Gunnar's office, once a shrine to his ego, looked diminished. He was slumped in his oversized leather chair, looking 10 years older than he had a month ago. Logan stood by the window, his arms crossed, radiating impotent fury. He didn't even glance at me when I walked in. "Tiffany," Gunnar said, gesturing to a chair, "thank you for coming." I sat, placing my sleek modern laptop bag beside me. "You said you wanted to discuss my expertise." Gunnar nodded, looking at Logan, who finally turned, his expression a mixture of resentment and desperation. "Look, Tiff," Logan began, his tone attempting a semblance of his old swagger but falling miserably short. "Things have gotten a bit out of hand. This whole Shepherd system thing, the press, it's a mess." "A mess you created," I stated, not unkindly, just factually. Logan's jaw tightened. "Okay, fine. Maybe some mistakes were made. Hindsight is 20/20, right?" "My foresight was also 20/20, Logan," I reminded him. "You just chose to ignore it." Gunnar cleared his throat loudly. "Tiffany, what Logan is trying to say is, we need your help. We need you to help us salvage the company." "Salvage it?" I raised an eyebrow. "From what I've read, and from what my computer stuff tells me, MSI is already taking on a lot of water." "That's where you come in," Logan said, stepping forward, trying to inject some enthusiasm into his voice. He picked up a hastily printed document from his father's desk. We've put together a preliminary rescue plan, a new digital transformation unit, and we want you to lead it." He slid the document across the polished mahogany towards me. I didn't touch it. "You'd have full autonomy, of course," Gunnar added quickly, "to rebuild, to modernize, whatever it takes." Logan, however, couldn't resist adding his own spin, his arrogance flaring up even in their darkest hour. "You'd report directly to me, naturally, as head of operations, and your compensation, well, it would be very generous, especially for someone at your career stage." He even managed a condescending little smile. "We understand your academic theories are interesting, but they'll need to be tempered with some real-world business sense. My sense, to be specific. We need practical solutions, Tiff, not more predictions of doom." That was it. The final patronizing nail in their coffin. They weren't learning. They weren't truly repentant. They were just desperate, backed into a corner, and still they thought they were smarter, better. They saw me as a tool, a slightly more advanced version of Otto, to be wielded and then, presumably, put back in my place. My simmering resentment, the years of quiet fury, didn't explode. Instead, it crystallized into something cold, sharp, and diamond-hard. My initial desire for simple vindication, for them to just admit I was right, morphed into something far more ambitious. I wasn't just going to watch them fall, I was going to give them a shove, a very public, very precise, very ethical shove. A faint smile touched my lips. I met Logan's gaze, then Gunnar's. "All right," I said, my voice dangerously calm, almost a purr. "I'll consider your proposal." Relief washed over their faces. Logan almost sagged against the desk. "I have a few conditions, of course," I continued, my smile widening just a fraction. "My consultation fee, for starters, will be substantial, non-negotiable, payable up front, and I'll need full unrestricted access to everything, every file, every server, every email, every financial record, no locked doors, no need-to-know restrictions, everything." Gunnar and Logan exchanged a quick, hopeful glance. They were so desperate, they'd agree to almost anything. "Oh, of course, Tiffany," Gunnar said, nodding vigorously. "Whatever you need." "Excellent," I said, picking up my laptop bag. "Then I accept your generous offer. Let's save McCormick & Son Industries." The lie tasted like triumph. My substantial consultation fee was, to put it mildly, eye-watering. I'd calculated it carefully, enough to be a serious financial blow, forcing them to liquidate some personal assets, but not quite enough to make them balk entirely. Gunner's face went pale when I named the figure, but after a tense whispered conference with Logan in the corner of his office, he agreed. The wire transfer hit my consultancy account the next day. Phase 1 complete. Then came the full unrestricted access. I was given a master keycard, admin passwords to every system, and a small dusty office that had probably once belonged to a long-forgotten middle manager. For 3 weeks, I audited MSI. I arrived early, left late. Gunner and Logan would occasionally peer in, seeing me surrounded by printouts, my screen filled with complex data flows and lines of code. They saw me working tirelessly, and a fragile hope began to bloom in their eyes. They thought I was their prodigal daughter, returned to save the family empire with my computer stuff. They thought I was their saviour. They were so wrong. I wasn't just auditing their current mess. I was excavating their history. Decades of ethically dubious shortcuts, systematically falsified environmental reports, deliberately obscured financial dealings, and the glaring, willful ignorance of the Shepherd system's vulnerabilities. My useless degree had armed me with the exact tools to unearth it all, to connect the dots, to build an irrefutable case. And the Shepherd system? Oh, that was a masterpiece of malice. The anonymous emailer had been right about its brittle bones. But it was more than just neglect. I found digital breadcrumbs cleverly hidden in old code comments and archived server logs left by a disgruntled former senior engineer. An engineer MSI had apparently cheated out of a significant patent and then, unceremoniously, fired years ago. He hadn't just left it vulnerable. He'd woven in a series of subtle logic bombs designed to trigger cascading failures under specific load conditions the Henderson account had perfectly met. It was a ticking time bomb, and Logan had gleefully pressed the detonator. On the first Monday of the 4th week, I requested a full board meeting. "I'm ready to present my recovery plan," I told Gunner. The boardroom was tense. The remaining board members, a collection of aging yes-men and nervous investors, looked to me with a mixture of hope and trepidation. Ulysses Wade was there, his face an unreadable mask of stone. Gunner and Logan sat at the head of the table, trying to project an air of weary confidence. Vivian was even present, perched on a chair by the wall, presumably for moral support, looking pale and anxious. I connected my laptop to the large presentation screen. The first slide simply read, "McCormick & Son Industries, an ethical audit." "Good morning," I began, my voice clear and steady. "For the past 3 weeks I have conducted a thorough audit of MSI's operations, systems, and historical practices as per our agreement." Gunner nodded encouragingly. Logan managed a tight smile. "My findings," I continued, clicking to the next slide, which was filled with damning bullet points, "indicate a company not just in crisis, but one that has operated with a systemic disregard for ethical practices, regulatory compliance, and data security for well over a decade." A nervous murmur went through the room. Gunner's smile faltered. For the next hour, I laid it all out. The falsified compliance reports Otto had been pressured to sign, the deliberate exploitation of environmental loopholes, the critically outdated Shepherd system, not just neglected, but, as I revealed, actively sabotaged by a vengeful ex-employee whose warnings had been ignored. I presented charts, internal emails I'd unearthed, financial discrepancies, all compiled with the cold, hard precision my useless degree had taught me. "My recovery plan," I said, my voice ringing with absolute clarity as I reached my final slide, "is therefore straightforward. The only ethical path forward is immediate, full disclosure to all relevant regulatory bodies, the EPA, the SEC, the Data Protection Authority, full transparency with all affected clients and victims of potential data breaches. This will, undoubtedly, bankrupt the company. It will invite crippling fines and lawsuits, but it is the only responsible action. The room was silent, stunned. Gunnar looked like he'd been punched in the gut. Logan's face was turning a dangerous shade of purple. However, I added, my voice dropping slightly, to ensure this happens with the necessary urgency and completeness, I took a breath. As of 8:01 a.m. this morning, I anonymously submitted a comprehensive whistleblower report containing all of this evidence and more to 7 federal and state regulatory agencies. I also provided a full copy to Ms. Caroline Brewer, who I believe will find it makes for compelling journalism. Chaos erupted. Logan lunged to his feet, shouting, "You treacherous little—" Gunnar just stared at me, his face ashen, devastation etched into every line. Vivian let out a small, horrified gasp. Ulysses Wade, however, slowly rose from his chair, a grim, almost approving look on his face. He didn't say a word, just turned and walked out of the boardroom. "Oh, and one more thing," I said, my voice cutting through the rising din. "My rather substantial consultation fee, I'm using it to establish a severance fund for the MSI employees who will inevitably lose their jobs due to your mismanagement." I looked directly at Gunnar, at the father who had dismissed and belittled me my entire life. "You said my degree was a waste of tuition for a girl," I said, my voice devoid of heat, just cold, hard fact. "Turns out it was the most expensive education you ever paid for." Then I picked up my laptop, turned, and walked out of the boardroom, leaving them to the symphony of their own destruction. The fat lady wasn't just singing, she was bringing the whole damn opera house down. The implosion of McCormick & Son Industries was swift, brutal, and spectacularly public. Caroline Brewer's exposé, built on the mountain of meticulously organized evidence I'd handed her, was a journalistic atom bomb. It wasn't just a story, it was a multi-part series complete with leaked documents, damning timelines, and interviews with shell-shocked former employees, many of whom were now beneficiaries of the MSI Employee Transition Fund I'd established with Gunnar's money. The series won her a prestigious award, which she accepted with a pointed thank you to the courageous whistleblower who valued ethics over silence. I allowed myself a small private smile when I read that. Regulatory bodies swarmed what was left of MSI like sharks to a blood trail. The SEC, the EPA, the Data Protection Authority, they all wanted their pound of flesh, and there was plenty to go around. Fines piled up so colossal they made my substantial fee look like pocket change. Lawsuits from furious clients and shareholders followed, each one another nail in the company's coffin. Gunnar and Logan? Their descent was just as dramatic. Stripped of their company, their reputations shredded, they faced a barrage of legal battles. The words potential criminal charges started appearing in news reports next to their names. Their assets were frozen. The sprawling family home, the scene of so many dismissive dinners, went on the market, a forced sale. I heard through the grapevine, Shiloh, my old professor, still had contacts who knew contacts, that Logan had been seen screaming at a bewildered barista over the price of a latte. Gunnar, apparently, barely left whatever cramped apartment he'd been forced to rent. Vivienne became a recluse. The society pages that once breathlessly reported her charity gala appearances now only mentioned the McCormick name in hushed, scandalized tones. Her attempts to reach out to me, tearful voicemails, pleading texts sent from burner phones, went unanswered. The bridge hadn't just been burned, its ashes had been scattered to the four winds. There was nothing left to salvage, no path back to what was. My own life, by contrast, had accelerated. The Innovate Solutions partnership was a roaring success. My division, specializing in predictive algorithmic auditing and ethical compliance, became the gold standard. Companies, spooked by MSI's very public immolation, were suddenly desperate to ensure their own houses were in order. My client list grew. I hired staff, bright, dedicated people who believed in doing things the right way. We moved into a sleek, modern office space downtown with panoramic city views. I didn't gloat, not publicly. I didn't need to. The results spoke for themselves. There was a cold, hard satisfaction in it, like solving a complex equation and seeing the elegant, irrefutable proof emerge. Justice, in its starkest, most uncompromising form, had been served. I'd built my own empire on the ashes of theirs, an empire founded on the very principles they'd scorned. Did I feel remorse? For them? No, not a flicker. They had sown the wind, and they had reaped the whirlwind. My actions had consequences, for them and for me. The finality of the broken family ties was a tangible thing, a void where something, however dysfunctional, used to be. I had become someone different, someone harder, more calculating to see this through. There was a solitary edge to the victory, a quiet understanding that some doors, once closed, can never be reopened. But I was free. Free of their condescension, their dismissal, their suffocating archaic expectations. I was respected. I was successful. I was the architect of my own life. This morning, I was sipping coffee in my new office, the city sprawling beneath me, a tapestry of lights and ambition. An alert popped up on my monitor, a newsfeed notification. McCormick & Son Industries officially declares Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Liquidation of all remaining assets to commence immediately. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched my lips. I took another sip of coffee, the taste rich and satisfying. "Have fun being poor, Logan," I murmured to the empty room, the city lights reflecting in my eyes. "Some theories aren't so useless after all." The opera was well and truly over, and I, the girl with the pointless degree, had written the final devastatingly beautiful aria.